Hello everyone and welcome back to The Lost Planeswalker. You're here with me, Jesse, The Lost Planeswalker. The most interesting out of all the new Marvel Secret Lair drop has to be Wolverine, best there is. He has fun, flavorful abilities with amazing variety of strategies that you can build around. So let's see how Wolverine works. Wolverine, best there is. 1 red and green, legendary creature, mutant berserker hero. Unrivaled lethality. Double all damage Wolverine would deal. Well, of course he does. At the beginning of each end step, if Wolverine dealt damage to another creature this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on him, and 1 and a green, regenerate Wolverine. So I think it's really interesting. Wolverine comes with a ton of different play strategies, including some keywords we don't see anymore. Regenerate is kind of phased out, so it's very fun that they brought it back here. But while Wolverine is packed with lots of abilities, let's see how we can empower those abilities. So let's look at this deck design layout, starting with ways to beef him up and add a ton more counters to make him bigger and bigger every turn. Next, let's look at ways to deal more damage and take extra combat steps to deal even more damage with Wolverine. And finally, we have the good stuff to deal direct damage and protect ourselves from board wipes. But before we dive into those, I want to quickly mention some of the other Secret Lair cards that you can add for flavor to this deck coming out in this Secret Lair drop.
Let's start out by looking at those new Secret Lair cards with Earth's Mightiest Emblem. This is a special arcane signet that is very expensive, and you can only receive it if you paid a ton of money and bought a bunch of Secret Lairs during this Secret Lair drop. So if you didn't get it, you can pick one up for about $65, which is insane, so I'd probably avoid it. But if you really want the theme as many Marvel cards as possible in your deck, I guess pick up this one. But the other really cool Secret Lair cards we have here is Berserk, Rhythm of the Wild, Rite of Passage, Soul Ring, an Adamantium Bonding Tank, or the Ozolith, which is a very nice pickup. But the Soul Ring is from the Iron Man Secret Lair, and I just want to point that out in case you wanted to pick that up separately. But let's start out by looking at some cards that are going to help Wolverine get even bigger. Starting with Doubling Power, and we have a lot of great choices here that are varied in price, but all pretty reasonable. We have Unnatural Growth, Xenagos, God of Revels, and Zapandrel Hunger Domus. Unnatural Growth is 1 green, 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 green enchantment. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until the end of your turn. Notably here, it's going to be each combat, not just during your combat, so Wolverine is just going to get twice as big and just be a big threat. Xenagos, God of Revels, 3 red and a green, legendary creature, enchantment god with indestructible. As long as your devotion to red and green is less than 7, this isn't a creature, but that's not really the ability we care about. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature control gains haste and gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is that creature's power. If we're already doubling up Wolverine's power, well, we can double it up again, which is just going to be insane. And then Zapandrel Hunger Domus, 5 green green, legendary creature, Phyrexian Horror with reach. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. You can also pay green green or Phyrexian green, sack 2 other creatures, put an indestructible counter on Zapandrel Hunger Domus. Notably here, we can trigger all of these at the beginning of combat in whatever order we choose. So we can do Unnatural Growth, then Zapandrel, then Xenagos, making Wolverine as he is base form. He goes from a 2/2 to a 4/4 to an 8/8 just for having these on the battlefield, which is insane. And he also deals double damage, meaning that he would deal 16 damage just for having these on the board and him have no counters on him. Now just think about a couple counters and how outrageous that could get very quickly. But we want to put a ton of counters on him, so let's look at ways we can double counters. We have Bristly Bill, Spine Sower, Court of Garenberg, and Vigor. This is not only going to help us double counters, but these are all going to help place counters. So Bristly Bill, Spine Sower, 1 in a green, legendary creature, Plant Druid, a very powerful card right now that says whenever a land enters, put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature, then for 5 mana or 3 green green, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, which is pretty insane. Court Garenberg is 1 green green enchantment. When this enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, and at the beginning of your upkeep, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among up to 2 creatures. Then if you're the monarch, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. Trample, which is insane. And then Vigor, one of the best cards ever printed in green. 3 green, 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 creature elemental incarnation with Trample. If damage would be dealt to another creature you control, prevent that damage. Put a +1/+1 counter on that creature for each 1 damage prevented this way. And when a Vigor is put into a graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. What an insane number of cards that are just gonna help us double counters while also placing counters. It's just sick. But some other ways we can add additional counters here. We have Branching Evolution, Forgotten Ancient, and Vorinclex Monstrous Raider. Branching Evolution is 2 and a green enchantment. If 1 or more counters would put on a creature you control, twice that many are put on it instead, which is very, very good. Now, it is +1/+1 counters, which is really all we're going to be placing, but that's really great. Forgotten Ancient says whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then at the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of +1/+1 counters from it onto other creatures. And then Vorinclex Monstrous Raider is 4 green, green, legendary creature for Extreme Predator with Trample and Haste. If you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kinds on a counter on that permanent or player instead. And if an opponent would put counters on a permanent or player, they put half as many of those kinds of counters on a permanent or player instead, rounded down. Next up, let's look at some counters that are going to be placed on our creature using artifacts and equipment. And we have some particularly good ones from the Universes Beyond sets. So we have Bone Sabers, Power Fist, and Well Rested. Bone Sabers, 2 and a green, artifact equipment. Whenever an equipped creature attacks, put 4 counters on it. This is a very cool ability, especially with all the ways we can double those counters up. We can only equip it for 3, so that's actually pretty reasonable. Power Fist, 1 and a green, artifact equipment. Equipped creature has Trample, and whenever the creature deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. Giving Wolverine Trample is going to be insane because we're going to be dealing a ton of damage, being able to put a ton of counters back onto it. And then Well Rested, 1 in a green enchantment aura with enchant creature. Enchant creature has whenever this creature becomes untapped, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. You gain 2 life and draw a card. This triggers only 1 each turn. Once is good enough for us because we are going to really benefit from that. So some of these other ways we can get really big really quick is Belt of Giant Strength, Demonic Ruckus, Frantic Strength, Gaia's Gift, Gift of the Viper, Hardened Scales, Hunter's Prowess, Kami of Whispered Hopes, Luxodon Warhammer, Rancor, Titanic Brawl, and Vines of the Vastwood.
Now, before we see those Wolverine support cards, I would just like to say thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe, it would mean the world to me. And if you enjoy what I do, check out my Patreon below. Now, let's look at those Wolverine support cards in this deck.
Now looking at some support cards that are going to be very powerful in supporting our strategy, we have more fighting with extra combats and extra ways to fight. So we have Eki Battle Squad, Karlach Fury of Avernus, and Neith of the Dire Hunt. So Eki Battle Squad, 5 into red, creature goblin samurai. Whenever 1 or more modified creatures you control attack, untap all modified creatures you control. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. This triggers only once each turn. So basically we just get extra combats with Wolverine for as long as he's out there, as long as he's a counter or he's equipped. So that's pretty great. Karlach Fury of Avernus, 4 in a red, legendary creature tiefling barbarian. Whenever you attack, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap all attacking creatures. They gain first strike until end of turn. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. What a great way to give additional combats. And we don't have to attack with this creature, just like Eki Battle Squad, meaning that it's pretty safe. And then Neith of the Dire Hunt, 2 green green, legendary creature, human warrior, with whenever 1 or more creatures you control fight or become blocked, draw a card, which is pretty powerful. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 2 red or a green. If you do, double target creature's power until end of turn. That creature must be blocked this combat if able. What a great way to make it so Wolverine's going to get rid of something while also doubling its power. It's just insane. And there's so many ways to just deal so much damage with Wolverine. It's going to be such a great commander. Some ways that we can give Wolverine Trample, because that's going to be pretty important. We have Garruk's Uprising, Kodama of the West Tree, and Shadow Spear. Garruk's Uprising, 2 and a green enchantment. Whenever it enters the battlefield, if you can creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Yeah, we can probably do that. Creatures control have Trample. That's great. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under control, draw a card. Now, notably here, a lot of the support cards don't have power 4 or greater, but we do have a bunch of them. So this is actually going to be really nice when we cast those spells. Kodama of the West Tree, 2 and a green, legendary creature spirit with reach, modified creature creatures you control have trample, which is going to be perfect for us. And whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land, put on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. We are definitely probably going to be ramping with Wolverine every turn, so Kodama here is a perfect pick. And then Shadow Spear, 1 mana, legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, has trample and lifelink. And then 1 mana, permanent, your opponent's control, lose hexproof, indestructible until end of turn. This is a really great card in any deck. Really, there's no reason not to put Shadow Spear in, but the trample and lifelink are essentially really, really powerful here. So not only does Wolverine's power get doubled, but we are going to give him double strike next with Lizard Blades, Psychotic Fury, Teamer Battle Rage. Lizard Blades, 1 in a red, artifact creature, equipment Lizard, this has double strike, equipped creature has double strike, and we can reconfigure it onto Wolverine for just 2 mana, which seems pretty cheap and a great way to give double strike there. Psychotic Fury, 1 in a red instant, target multicolored creature gains double strike until end of turn, and we can draw a card in the process, so yeah, I think that that's pretty good. And then Teamer Battle Rage, 1 in a red instant, target creature gains double strike until end of turn, and Ferocious, that creature also gains trample until end of turn if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, which Wolverine probably will be, so perfect match there. So some of the other support cards we got here are Heroic Intervention, Horrid Vigor, Keen Sense, Mithril Coat, and Signature Slam. So lastly here, I want to talk about the good stuff cards, and then we have 2 categories I want to bring up that I think are really important, which is dealing damage directly with Wolverine, and then board wipes for everybody except. So dealing direct damage, we have Contest of Claws, Gravantic Punch, and Ram Through. Contest of Claws is 1 in a green sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to another target creature. If excess damage is dealt this way, we discover X, where X is the excess damage. We're probably going to be dealing a lot of excess damage with Wolverine, meaning we can discover pretty much anything out of our deck. Gravantic Punch is 3 in a red sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target player. We can also jumpstart this, which means we can cast this from our graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying its mana cost, then exile this card. So we can only do it twice in a game technically, but twice is probably enough. If we have a ton of damage on Wolverine, we can just deal it directly to one of our opponents and hopefully knock them out. And then Ram Through, 1 in a green instant. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. If the creature you control has trample, excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. We put a lot of cards in this deck to give trample, so hopefully we can kind of get a 2-for-1 with Ram Through. Now, we're going to look at some cards that wipe the board, except for me, with Blasphemous Act, Chain Reaction, and Waltz of Rage. All of these are going to make it so Wolverine can basically clear the board using these board wipes while being big enough that nothing's going to happen to himself. So Blasphemous Act, 8 in a red sorcery. This spell costs 1 less cast for each creature on the battlefield. It deals 13 damage to each creature. I think it's pretty likely we're going to have more than 13 counters on Wolverine, meaning that he's going to be able to withstand this. Similarly, Chain Reaction, 2 red sorcery. This deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. This one gets a little iffy because there's a possibility that there's enough little things on the board that's going to outpace how big Wolverine is, but we're going to do a lot to try and prevent that. And then Waltz of Rage, 3 red sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature. Until end of turn, whenever a creature you control dies, exile the top card of your library. You may play that until the end of your next turn. So not only is this going to help us clear the board, but it's also going to put us ahead by exiling a ton of cards for some of our smaller creatures that, just had to get out of the way in order for us to swing through or do whatever we needed to do by clearing the board with Waltz of Rage. The remaining good stuff cards in this deck is Basilisk Collar, Beast Within, Chandra's Ignition, Commander's Fear, Cultivate, Eternal Witness, Fanatic of Ronus, Goblin, and Archomancer, Kodama's Reach, Soul's Majesty, Swiftfoot Boots, Sword of the Animist, and Untimely Malfunction. Like I've said in the rest of these videos, we have a pretty nice maybe board here that'd be worth checking out for some swaps, maybe if you didn't like all the cards I included, and we also have a basic land base that should include a bunch of cards you already own, so it should be pretty nice to run Wolverine.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Wolverine Commander deck video. Comment down below on what you think of the cards that I added. What would you add? What would you cut? If you would please leave a like, share this video with a friend, and subscribe. That would mean the world to me, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Now today's Scryfall card of the day is Deadly Rollick. Ortrum was disappointed in how quickly its new friend got tired and stopped playing. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.